All right, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the little intro there I put together over the last few hours. Welcome to the podcast. I see a few of you are in the chat. How you doing, guys? Tox, thank you very much. Yes, thank you for the congratulations. Swaypool, thank you very much for the best opening ever. Great, thank you. Appreciate that, guys. I've got a couple of things I want to go through. Obviously, this is the first podcast on the channel. There's no showcase. There's just me, a screen, and you guys in the chat. So I appreciate you guys joining me today live, and those that will come and join us later once the stream is finished and goes into video format. So a couple of things, guys. I'm going to flip over to the topics screen shortly, where we'll cover some of the topics of discussion on the podcast today. But just to start, I suppose a little intro really, because this is the first of a weekly podcast that I'd like to do every Sunday. Hopefully around this time, but over time, you guys can help kind of refine how the podcast works. Your input's going to be really really key. But really, this is obviously a PlayStation centric channel. So a lot of the discussion will be about PlayStation topics, but we'll also cover gaming as well. So expect to cover things like PC, Xbox, Nintendo from time to time, but in large parts, it will generally be about PlayStation. We'll do a couple of bits of housekeeping in just a second. So those that have been following the channel for quite some time, you guys take your time out to comment on the videos, posts, the polls, and you know exactly what I'm talking about when I come back to you guys really quickly. Hopefully, you know, within a few hours, sometime within 24 hours. But I try my best to respond to pretty much every comment. But over the last few months, this is getting more and more difficult as the channel continues to grow. It's more and more difficult to engage with everybody on the channel. It's just simply not enough time for me to get back to everybody. So this is where hopefully the podcast kicks in. I feel it's time to add another layer of engagement onto the channel by way of a weekly podcast. Here we can talk about what's been happening during the week, chance to talk about, discuss, debate about the things in the gaming industry. So that's really the essence of why the podcast was set up. And over time, over the coming weeks and months ahead, I've mentioned the podcast will evolve. It will change over time. And you know, your feedback, your suggestions, your ideas, that will help improve the podcast. And what we'll do is we'll take the best ideas and do a few polls on the channel over the course of several weeks, and we'll try to kind of incorporate that into the podcast. Let me know if there's any problems with the stream or the voice, the mic, or anything like that, because I've got a little error on my screen here, but I don't know if that's coming through to you guys. Let me know, guys, if everything's coming through okay. So how can you guys support the channel? How can you guys support the videos and the podcast? Well, first and foremost, you guys being here, you guys turning up to the live streams, to the videos, whether it's now, whether it's later, because I appreciate not everyone is available right now to kind of join the live stream. But the number one thing that helps the channel is you guys turning up to watch the videos, watch the live streams, and your engagement, your comments that you guys make. All that helps. It really helps support the channel. Other things you guys can do to help support the channel: leave a like, hit that like button. That supports the channel more than anything else too. Like, share if you want to share, but hitting that like button spreads it across YouTube, so I'm told. You can consider becoming a channel member and support the channel directly. I have 2 tiers available. You can see at the bottom of the screen, we've got our 2 tiers, the God of War tier and the Uncharted tier. So we've got 2 tiers of members. You'll see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen. I am currently actually looking for some custom badges for the channel for the members. So keep an eye on that over the next few weeks, and hopefully I'll announce something on the channel. You can also subscribe to the channel and never miss any videos or posts if you want to support the channel. And finally, have your say by way of super chats and super stickers. If you have something to say, if you want to get something off your chest, if you want to make a statement, and if you want to discuss something you're passionate about, put forward a super chat. That helps support the channel massively. So hope everyone is doing well, and let's have a look at the topics that we'll be talking about today on the podcast. You can see the topics scrolling across the top of the screen. So I want to take a look at the PlayStation console strategy first, which will include things like the focus on hardware, PlayStation 5, PlayStation 6, their focus on cloud infrastructure, exclusive content, and some of their lessons learned over the live service fiasco, should we say. And we'll dive into more of that. But that's the first topic of the channel. And then we'll have a look at a couple of other things. Gears of War launching on PlayStation pretty soon. And it's rumored that the game will be fully available on disc. And that's a rumor coming out of, I think, one of the Spanish sites. We'll have a quick look at that. And Halo is also coming out to PlayStation sooner than expected. And also touch on the Xbox Handheld, which apparently is now reportedly been cancelled. I also want to have a quick look at this because I caught this story early this morning that Tencent is sniffing around Stellar Blade. Their developers shift up, possibly for an acquisition or investing in some way, shape, or form. They've already done it with Arrowhead, and I think Sony's missed the opportunity there. But should Sony step up and do something with shift up before Tencent gets their claws into them? So we'll have a quick look at that, and then time permitting. So I don't know how long the podcast should be. I'm going to leave that to you guys. But time permitting, Sony has started to remove PlayStation regional restrictions on PC. Again, lessons learned from Sony. Good thing or bad thing? We'll have a talk about that later. So those are the topics. You can see them scrolling across the top. Those are the topics for the podcast today. And Bomb Squad, how you doing, buddy? How are you today, this Sunday evening? Aaron Walsh, Tencent also owns part of Larian. They do. Yeah, absolutely. They're a absolutely phenomenal. Well, say phenomenal. They're absolutely huge in terms of within the gaming industry. They have their claws in everything at the moment, in particular Ubisoft too. Okay. So what I'd like to do, I've got a couple of screens open here. What I'd like to do is start with the Sony strategy. And when I go into any of these topics, I'd like to have a look at what the source material is. So is it a rumor? Is it a leak? Where's it come from? And there's several sites reporting pretty much the same thing about Sony's strategy because it's documented evidence, right? It's an actual meeting that they have once a year. So there's multiple gaming sites we can go to. I've gone to PlayStation Universe. So the article you can see on the left-hand side of your screen, that's from PlayStation Universe. So we'll read a little bit from there, and then we'll have a look at what that means, maybe debate it, discuss it. And there's three main points that I wanted to really have a look at from the PlayStation Sony meeting that took place last week. Bomb Squad, you're on the treadmill. Excellent, bro. I wish I had one of those under desk treadmills here. Fantastic. So let's have a look at this first part. This is about the PlayStation hardware. So hopefully that you can see that there. So right, Hideo Nishino, president and CEO of Sony Interactive Entertainment, has touched base on the future of PlayStation hardware during a business segment meeting. And while he's not in a position to talk about the PlayStation 6 just yet, made it clear that there's still demand from players for traditional hardware. The executive noted that cloud streaming is progressing strongly and provides an additional option for which players can access content, but did note that its user base are still interested in playing on traditional console hardware, something which has been proven by the release of the PlayStation 5 and the PlayStation 5 Pro. And then with some direct quotes here, cloud streaming is progressing well from a technical standpoint, as we have demonstrated with our offerings, but end-to-end network stability is not in our control. And the higher cost per playtime compared to the traditional console model remains a challenge. Cloud gaming is increasingly providing an additional option for players to access content, but our belief is that the majority of players continue to want to experience gaming through local execution without dependency on network conditions. And PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 5 Pro have validated this, I believe. And then another one here is we now have a large ecosystem of highly engaged players across both the PlayStation 5 and the PlayStation 4 generation. So naturally, therefore, there's a huge interest in our next generation console strategy. Sony and AMD have partnered for Project Amethyst, with the PS6 heavily rumored to utilize the chip manufacturer's 3D stacked chips. Furthermore, there have been reports that Sony is working on a new handheld to arrive alongside the PlayStation 6, which will apparently utilize shader binary compatibility to enable it to run PlayStation 5 games. So PlayStation 5 hardware then, or PlayStation 6 hardware, from a Sony perspective, isn't going anywhere, is it? That's their console strategy, just in terms of hardware. That is the center of everything they're doing going forward. Saxmax, thank you very much, buddy. Appreciate you enjoying the content. Mark, that's right. While we interrupt the Sony segment, yeah, Red Dead Redemption 2. Hopefully, he's going to get the next gen update this week. Okay, so in terms of the hardware perspective from Sony's meeting, just focusing on hardware, not live service, not the exclusive stuff, but the hardware, as in the console, PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 6, is the center of everything Sony is doing with PlayStation going forward, because no one knows what's going to happen, right, in 10 or 15 years' time. But what we do know right now is Sony is focusing on PlayStation consoles going forward. How you doing, Corey? Hope you're doing well, buddy. And what most PlayStation gamers want to know is that Sony is not going anywhere when it comes to PlayStation consoles. While focusing on the console side of things, they're also building and developing cloud infrastructure, cloud technology, because like I said, no one knows when console sales are going to decline in the future. There may be a time in the future, maybe PS6, maybe PS7, who knows, right, where sales are just not delivering and Sony has to switch. They have to deviate. And if that time comes in the future where Sony has to do that and change strategy, they can lean on and fall back on this cloud infrastructure already up and running in the background. Most companies will always have a contingency in the background. They always plan, right? A what if scenario. What if the PlayStation 6 doesn't really do it? What if the PlayStation 7 doesn't work? What if console hardware is in decline? All these strategies, all these meetings, they're always happening in the background. And in the meantime, right now, 2025 consoles are flying off the shelves. The PlayStation 5 is on course to hit over 100 million consoles by the end of next year. Just imagine what's going to happen when GTA 6 console bundles kick in, right? They're going to surpass 100 million next year. The Switch 2, that's just broken records in the first 3 or 4 days of launch. Once again, it goes to show that the appetite from gamers for hardware technology is really there. They just want a reason to invest in technology. They want a reason to buy your console or your handheld. The only platform struggling right now is Xbox, and they're struggling to sell their hardware, and we know why. Sony's focus is clear: PlayStation 5, PlayStation 5 Pro, PS6, handheld device, and VR technology. That's what they're focusing on now. And all the while they're doing that, they're building a future where they've got subscription services, they've got cloud infrastructure and cloud technology just in case they need to switch it on. What do you guys think about that? What are your thoughts? Bomb Squad, you're gutted about Mind's Eye. Yeah, it's not... hopefully it gets an improvement. There's a couple of updates recently. I think there was one yesterday and there's another one happening next week, I believe. Hopefully it will improve the bugginess of the game. Sony continuing to prioritize the console is music to my ears. Saxmax, that is so true. That is 100% true. That's what we want to hear, right? Because all we've been hearing over the last 3 or 4 years, really, because Sony's been pretty quiet, but you do hear a lot from Microsoft and Xbox saying the future is live service, the future is games as a service, the future is cloud streaming and all that kind of stuff, right? I'm not interested in any of that. I'm just interested in playing on my console. That's all I want to do. How you doing, Stephen? How you doing, buddy? PS5 Pro would fly off the shelves if it was the only console to do 60 frames per second. Yeah, 100%. 100%. We still don't know what the GTA 6 performance is like on a PS5 Pro. What we saw when they did the trailer, I think that was running on a base PlayStation 5. So hopefully we can get 60 frames per second, but it's going to be hard because of how packed that game is. Going to be densely packed with NPCs, with just stuff happening in that world. It's a living, breathing world, right? So my take on just purely looking at the hardware side of things, there is no change. We're going to get a PS6. We'll get a PS6 Pro. Might even get a PS7. Who knows that far ahead? But it's happening. So nothing to worry about from a console perspective. It's at the center of what Sony does going forward. What else did we have there? We had the console exclusivity side of things from PlayStation's meeting, and we'll have a look at that now. Corey, you're saying this is why the social media take on the gaming industry is cooked. The numbers of the consoles business don't support the claims of people arguing consoles are dying. No, you're right. Consoles aren't dying. Consoles are thriving. There's only one, and I don't want this to come across as fanboyish, right? I know it's PlayStation centric, but I believe I've taken a stance on how far we're gonna go. This is about debate. It's about discussion. Channel's about having a sensible, grown-up approach to things, not about dumping on anyone's platform. That's not what this channel is about. But there's only one platform struggling out there, and there's a lot of people coming out saying things about consoles are dying, but they're not. The evidence out there suggests otherwise. I said PlayStation 5 next year is going to hit more than 100 million console sales. The Switch 2, the fastest ever console in the first 3 or 4 days ever. And you think about the great consoles we had, that's the best one ever so far in terms of launch sales. You got people queuing up around the block. You got people queuing up midnight launches to buy the Nintendo Switch. This isn't a Nintendo Switch channel, but I'm just saying the appetite for console, the appetite for hardware is as strong as it's ever been. That's never going away, in my opinion. Corey, you're saying it's not fanboyish to say that one console is dying while the others are thriving. Some might argue overachieving. No, it's not. It's not. It's facts, isn't it? We can only speak facts, right? One console's not selling. The other two competitors are, and that's evident. Sax Max, I've got my PS5 Pro bring on GTA 6, hopefully at 60 FPS on both consoles. Hopefully the game delivers 60 FPS on the PS5 Pro. Phenomenal. Anyway, let's have a look at this other piece then from that same meeting. This is the, can you guys see this on your screen? You got Herman Holst there. Here we go. Right, so this is the Herman Holst segment, which refers to the exclusivity piece. So Sony Interactive Entertainment CEO of Studio Business Group, Herman Holst, has revealed that the hardware manufacturer is adopting a measured approach in regards to bringing its titles to PC, having previously been quite aggressive in porting first-party games to other formats. Speaking during Sony's latest business segment earlier today, the executive was quizzed about recent trend format holders shifting to multi-platform strategy, Microsoft being the prime example of this, having in the last year brought a number of former Xbox exclusives to PlayStation 5 and Switch, to which he replied. So this is from Herman Holst. You're quite right that we're continuously exploring new ways for players to interact with their franchises. It's important to realize that we're really thoughtful about bringing our franchises off console to reach new audiences, and that we're taking a very measured, very deliberate approach in doing that, particularly on the single player side. Our tentpole titles, they're such a differentiator. The point of differentiation, I should say, for the PlayStation console is that they will showcase the performance and the quality of the hardware. So we want to ensure that players get the best experience from these titles. We're very thoughtful about how and if we are going to bring these titles to other platforms. So Herman Holst clearly saying nothing's changed, right, in terms of the current strategy. So Corey is saying, Herman's saying that it's not a matter of when, it's a matter of if. Kills the narrative that all PlayStation games will be ported to PC. Yep, 100%. What he's saying is, look, there's a reason why, and I maintain this, and I'll talk about this, but there's a reason why people buy a PlayStation. You buy it for the games. You know you're going to get the best experiences if you like those kind of games, right? If you don't like single-player, story-driven games, then all right, the platform might not be for you. But people generally buy a PlayStation because they want that experience. They want those types of games. And more often than not, those games are only available on PlayStation. And it's only over the last few years that some of those games, and I say some of those games have gone to PC, which is fine. But not every game has gone to PC, and Herman Holst is just emphasizing that. I said, my take, and I maintain this, always have, always will, Whether you like it or not, whether you agree with it or not, exclusives are crucial for most businesses. Your unique value proposition for your customers is your console, your product, your service. Why should people buy and invest in your platform? Why should people buy your console in gaming, right? Why should fans or gamers invest their time and money into your products? This is why exclusives are key. I've always said this, and I'll maintain it, that exclusives drive the platform forward, right? They keep the platform relevant, and Herman Hulst has just said that. And I think, case in point, look at Xbox, look what's happening to the console. Unless you're someone who always buys consoles new at launch, like I do, I always buy it, regardless of platform, I'll always buy a new console at launch. And unless you're an Xbox hardcore fan of the platform, right now, if you're a casual gamer, there's no reason to own an Xbox console, okay? You'll be able to play all those games on other platforms. So it makes owning an Xbox right now redundant unless something changes. Sony doesn't want that to happen to the PlayStation. They want to, and they need to give you guys a reason. They need to give us a reason to keep invested in PlayStation. And the only way they're going to do this is by making games exclusive to the platform. It doesn't have to be for forever. We know that's not probably likely to happen. Some games will come onto PC. And from Sony's meeting, Herman Hulst has confirmed that PlayStation single-player games are not going to PC day and date, which was the other takeaway from that meeting. Single-player games may not even go to PC at all. And there's Gran Turismo has been out for how many years? 4, 5 years? Demon Souls, the remake on PlayStation 5, been out for 5 years, still hasn't come to PC. It's a case-by-case, scenario-by-scenario situation that PlayStation's working on here. Over time, we know games are going to PC in some way, shape, or form, right? Some games will, others won't. If it's a live service game or a multiplayer game, they will probably go to PC day and date, as it requires a large online community to keep those kind of games alive. And to be honest, I don't think anyone's got a problem with that. Most PlayStation gamers kind of already knew that Sony wouldn't take their first-party games over to PC day and date, and also the exclusive strategy that they have always had. That's been a key part of their strategy in the past. But it's always nice to have that confirmed and ratified by Sony leadership. That's my take on their console exclusivities. You know, it's a reason why you want to buy the platform in the first place. It's a reason why you want to invest in it. What do you guys think? What are your thoughts on console exclusivity? Should every game go to every platform? I don't think so. I don't think that should be the case. Okay, and the final part that I want to cover from that PlayStation business meeting was their lessons learned. This was from their live service parks. The live service stuff is not going away, and we need to address that. So you guys can see that. So Sony executive Herman Hulst revealed during the company's latest business segment meeting that the format holder will continue to release live service games on PlayStation 5 and PC, but is taking steps to ensure that it doesn't repeat the same mistakes as seen with Concord. Hulst then goes on to say, "We are continuing to invest in live service games, with Helldivers 2 being an example of success if we get things right. We have learned from many challenges, including Concord. We have restructured the development and review process of our games. Will not make the same mistakes twice." Concord was released in August 2024, developed by Firewalk Studios, but it was met with negative reviews and failed to find itself a dedicated fan base. The game shutting down 3 weeks after its launch. Refunds were offered to players, and it was reported that Concord cost around $400 million, give or take, but that was debunked by Chris Ding. Anyway, still a failure, but they've learned their lessons. So what do you guys think about that? Tox, you're saying live service isn't going away. I think Helldivers 2 was a big success for them. But at the same time, I think they're going to be a little bit more careful with these types of games. I agree. Yes. I completely agree. Sam, Sam Max, you saying not every game should be on every platform at launch. Exclusives sells consoles and build ecosystems. Corey, you're saying continue to make exclusives regardless of how PC gamers feel about it. Here's my take on this, right? They've put in place, Herman Holster saying they're never going to make the same mistake twice with these live service games. The problem Sony had was, whether it was Jim Ryan's fault, whether it was somebody else who greenlit all this stuff, but 2019, 2020, when they made all these decisions behind the scenes, they've got all their first party studios pretty much making live service games. So studios that have never developed, forget live service, that some of these studios have never done multiplayer before, not for years. And all of a sudden they're now building games that are supposed to last several years. It was a crazy strategy. So they've reversed that. And what they have now is just a handful of studios finishing off the last bits of their live service projects. So what they've put in place are several more robust systems to test games far earlier in the process of development to ensure that games are course corrected, fixed if they stray off from plan. Also to ensure that the games meet the requirements of a live service game, from playability, character design to engagement. All those things will be measured far earlier in the development process than previous live service efforts. Sony has scaled back its live service offerings so that most first-party studios right now can focus on single-player games, while they focus on, as far as I know, there's 3 live service projects right now. It's Marathon, Fair Games, if that's still happening and it's delayed, and then there's the Horizon live service game, which is still in development. That approach, just 3 live service games, is far better, and it's a sensible strategy. I don't really think people have a problem with live service games if they were done alongside the rest of the studios working on single player games. I don't think anyone would have had a problem with it if it was part of the strategy. And if we had a decent output of first party games being consistently released throughout the PlayStation 5 generation, we've had far too many projects cancelled, and the vast majority of those projects were live service games at the expense of single player games, first party games. But the new approach, this new strategy, which was put in place around 2023, is far more sensible. It's how PlayStation should have done all this live service things. This is what their approach should have been like in the first place. So Timmy, you're saying, I would say in business, it depends on who's leading the team, like football, that had the wrong leadership. Yes. I think the vast majority of this is on Jim Ryan's shoulders. He led the team. He led the gaming division. He led PlayStation. But I'm just shocked at, Sony is a cautious company, right? It takes them a long time to evoke change within the business. So to go from a PlayStation 4 generation where they were knocking out banger after banger of games, they just finished The Last of Us Part 2, they released Ghosts of Tsushima, and they had games lined up for the launch of 2020, to all of a sudden just scrap that and go to live service. Jim Ryan done a hell of a sales job, let's put it that way, for everyone to fall in line and believe his vision. I'm astounded at just how far they've come. But like I said, thankfully, they've course corrected at the expense of several years worth of development time. But it's going back to how it used to be. That's what we can take from it. Corey saying, I think that we as gamers have access to more information than ever about games and behind the scene information for games. I think it's important to understand that a lot of games get cancelled or fail. In the background, and we don't see it, but in the modern age, we see all those failures. Yeah, that's right. There are a lot of games that get cancelled, and there's always been games that get scrapped, right? And you're right. It's just that everything's under a microscope now, and as soon as something it's knocked on the head or it doesn't get pushed forward, it's doom and gloom. It's a crisis. Another game cancelled. Studios are in trouble. That seems to be the narrative every time, and sometimes I understand why it happens. That people run away with stories. A lot of it's clickbait stuff. I suppose the age of where we live, right, with social media and stuff like that. But you're right. There's lots of games that have always been cancelled. Projects have always been pulled apart, destroyed, ripped apart, even just before launch. But it feels more doom and gloom now. I suppose it feels like that more, especially with PlayStation over the last few years, because we know some of their studios have had single player games pushed to one side, scrapped, or it's been at the expense of single player games. I think that's why it hurts a bit more, right? If it was a case of, look, we've got these 5 or 6 new studios and they're making these live service games, but the rest of the studios are still making single player games. And if the live service games got scrapped, well, don't worry about it. We've still got single player games coming out. I think that there's an element of that to it as well. Tox, you're saying Marathon isn't doing so well, especially after stealing the assets from... yeah, there's a lot of problems happening at Marathon, a lot of issues. Look, we're in June. Apparently the game's coming out in September. So there's been no notices, no information about whether the game's going to be delayed, but we'll have to see what happens. Strategy where they're putting in place measures earlier, hopefully is to pick up on things like this. You know, someone copying, stealing, I don't know how it happened, but someone obviously took assets and put them into the assets area within the game development area, and they ended up using those assets within the game. That kind of stuff just can't happen. You know, where's the quality control for stuff like that? So I'm sure there's processes and measures that Sony have taken. As Herman Holster said, we don't want to make the same mistake twice. Well, we'll see, right? The proof is always in the pudding. So yeah, guys, what do you think? Sony's strategy, my take from that, nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. We know they've scaled back live service games. They're going to focus on single player games. Hardware is the focus. It's all about PlayStation consoles and other accessories that support it. Other things to support the console, like live service games, like subscriptions, cloud tech, and all that kind of stuff. That will happen in the background, but it's all about the console. That's the message to take away from here. How's everyone feeling? September. Yeah, Marathon September. Well, we'll see. We'll see how that game goes. How's everybody feeling? Everyone feeling good? Are we ready to move on from the PlayStation strategy? One thing I want to do on the podcast is not dwell on the same point for too long. Right? I want to keep it flowing. Corey, you're saying, I think that is what we have had. I think the Concord situation is a great analogy for the live service thing with Sony. They shut down Concord the day Astrobot released. They moved from a failure. Absolutely. See, you see, single player games for PlayStation, they've been doing it for years, right? They've got there's a proven formula that works with PlayStation games. Single player, first party content. There is a formula that Sony has that works. Whether it's, I don't know, whether it's a checklist, whether it's phases that the development team have to go through, all the first party studios are aware of it. You know, there's this cinematic music, there's an introduction, there's a kind of an emotional pull in the story. There's segments within the game and the way it's developed that Sony has introduced over years and years of development. And they are nowhere near that level from a live service perspective to have that same level of input. So it's going to take time, it's going to take many failures, 1 or 2 successes before they get that formula right with live service. I think what they've recognized is they should not have done what they did by having every studio work on live service games. I think they've recognized that, and what they want to do now going forward is just, you know, contain the studios that are working and the developers that are working on live service games. Just have 1 or 2 studios, a couple of games that are live service, get the rest pumping out content. And then we'll work with the live service studios to get better. Because what they need to do is build a knowledge base. They can always lean into Bungie, right? If Bungie get it right. That was supposed to be the team or the studio that supports everybody with their live service games. But clearly there's problems at Bungie as well. But if they've only got 2 or 3 studios working on live service games, it's a better way for them to focus their efforts rather than spreading themselves too thin. Okay. Are we ready to move on, guys? I'm ready to move on. I'm ready to move on to the next topic here, which is the Gears of War game. Let's see if we can get this opened up. So Gears of War, we know it's coming to PlayStation. So this is from Push Square. Okay. And what they're saying is, it's a sign of the times that this headline exists at all, but Xbox has proven that it doesn't give a hoot about physical media anymore, despite mouthpiece Phil Spencer saying his company is supportive of the sector a little over a year ago. As you'll no doubt be aware, the PlayStation 5 versions of Doom the Dark Ages and Indiana Jones and The Great Circle shipped with just a few megabytes on their discs. It looks like the upcoming The Outer Worlds 2 will also follow the same pattern, despite costing $80 at launch. But according to Spanish website Vandal, Gears of War Reloaded may buck this trend. According to the publication's retail sources, the Blu-ray release of this remaster will include the full game on the disc, so you'll be able to play it in its entirety without connecting to the internet. So that little piece there was from Push Square, saying that actually we may be getting a physical disc of Gears of War, which is great, and the fact that the disc is going to have the full game on, which is fantastic, which is what I wanted to hear. A reason why I stayed away from the other games, to be fair. Jack Foji, you're saying Halo PS5. Yeah, I'll come on to that in just a moment. Gears is $40. Gears is something like that. I think it's around £38 in the UK, so it's not a full price game. So whatever the equivalent is in the States, it's definitely not a full price game. The multiplayer beta for Gears of War is in a rough spot with very long waiting times for joining matches. Corey, you're saying it's ropey multiplayer. Good evening, Petrov. You want the full game on disc? Good news. Apparently, the full game is on the disc, according to Push Square, and they're taking this source from Vandal, a Spanish site. I'm excited for Gears. I like games, right? I don't care what platform they're on. I like games. I prefer PlayStation because they have the kind of games I like. I haven't played Gears of War for a very long time. 360 days, right? I played Gears, loved it. Played the first 3 games. Had a great time. Haven't played it in a very long time, so I'm excited about this game. And it's been completely remastered from the ground up, and that's a really good thing. I want to see if the game is pro enhanced. I don't seem to have any information about whether it's pro enhanced. I don't expect it to be, just given up what's happened with the other games, but maybe it is. I haven't really seen or read anything about that. Corey is saying, I buy all my games digital and support my physical gamer brethren. Excellent. If the game isn't fully on the physical disc, I don't buy the digital version. Yeah, I do that too. I prefer to buy physical. And if the game only has a few megabytes on the disc, I'll avoid it for now. I'll probably end up getting it in sale in the future. I'll have to wait another 10 years or something. Sam, you're saying, I've already pre-ordered my copy of Gears of War. Glad this game is on disc. Tox, I think, since it's a remaster, it's going to come fully optimized 4K 60 or 120 with all the whistles and bells. I hope so. Yeah, looking forward to this. Now, if I was an Xbox gamer, I'd be disappointed not having a physical disc for Xbox, right? But imagine God of War, just, hypothetical, right? Imagine God of War or Ghost of Tsushima went to Xbox, but the PlayStation version. Imagine Wolverine came out Christmas and it went everywhere, but the PlayStation version didn't have a disc. But we had one for Switch. We had one for Xbox. Wouldn't you feel disappointed? If I was a collector, I'd be disgusted at that. It's not good. It's not a good sign. Microsoft isn't looking after Xbox gamers, are they? Let's be honest. They're not looking after their gamers. Corey, Gears of War beta has 120 FPS on multiplayer. That's fantastic. Yeah, like, I'm not really a multiplayer live service kind of guy, but I used to play Gears of War online back in the day, right? So I would be tempted to dive back in and give Gears of War a blast online. Is Yotai going to have full game on this? I bloody hope so. I don't expect Sony PlayStation to release a game and not have the full data on the disc. Stephen, you're saying I'll be picking up Gears as well. Looks really good. Excellent. I think so. Yeah, I think it looks good. I think it looks good. I really hope the full game is on the disc. And like I said, it's less than £40 in the UK, give or take. So yeah, Microsoft. There isn't an Xbox physical version of this game, which is a disappointment. The problem is Microsoft is a software company, right? It doesn't really want hardware. It wants physical. It doesn't want physical products. It's a business whose ethos is about software as a solution, software as a service. Hardware doesn't fit into that strategy. Any hardware that Microsoft has, there will be a long-term plan. I say long-term, I don't mean a year. I mean 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. There's a plan at Microsoft to remove hardware, migrate hardware out of the business and just focus on software. It's a software business, right? So it's a problem. I can see you guys are interested in the Gears game, which is fantastic. Corey, you're saying at Petrov, all Sony games have full game data on disc. I think that's true. I believe that is the case. Tox, they're more of a software company now than ever before. 100%. Yeah, 100%. If they have any hardware, if they have any manufacturing, it's research and development. That's all it is. They'll, just like Google, they'll invest millions, billions maybe in research and development, but it's all about tech, software tech, AI tech, that side of things. And so if you look at Microsoft, their hardware division, consoles, they'll be phased out over time. There's a plan in place to phase it all out. It's going to happen. I don't want it to happen, but it's going to happen, unfortunately. Sax, you're saying, sadly, Microsoft has not cared about its console for quite some time, and that's why it's not selling. Yeah, it is sad to see just two platforms remaining, really. Gears of War on PlayStation is going to be epic even more when Halo comes out, yes. So let's have a look at the Halo one then. Let's have a look. Here we go. So I think we all get the picture that Xbox games are all coming to PlayStation. I think we all know that. Everyone knows that, right? Let's get the right link first of all. Here we go. So you can see that, right? So this is from 11th of June. So this was a few days ago. So this is saying a new leak suggests that Halo PlayStation 5 release date announcement is imminent as an entry for the game has been found on PSN backend. A known data miner claims that a retail API was discovered on the PlayStation Store. But what's interesting is that it's neither marked as Master Chief Collection nor Halo Infinite. The data miner, who goes as grunt.api on X, this is via Reddit, claims that the listing they've discovered is for a different Halo game than what we're expecting. As mentioned above, speculation suggests that much like Gears of War, Microsoft is bringing its first game in the series to PlayStation 5. Developed by Bungie, Halo Combat Evolved released in 2001 to universal praise. The Verge's Tom Warren had reported back in 2024 that Microsoft was remastering the game along with plans to bring it to PlayStation platforms. Considering Warren has been spot on about Microsoft's plans thus far, and remember that Tom Warren's been spot on because I'm going to come on to him next when we talk about the handheld. So Tom Warren has been spot on so far about everything about Microsoft. We're leaning towards this mystery listing being a remaster or a full remake of Halo Combat Evolved. As for when the game will release, that's anybody's guess right now. And grunt.api you couldn't locate release information. So a personal guess is that its launch will be in line or in fall 2025, possibly during the holiday season. So it's another bit of news about Halo coming to PlayStation 5 sooner than expected, and it looks like it's going to be a remake or remaster. Corey, you're saying there's a YouTube channel that tests all PS physical game releases to see if the game will work without internet connect. They've tested every Sony game release. Fantastic. What is that YouTube channel? Just out of curiosity, I'm keen to know. So Gears, we know is coming. Halo looks like it's following suit. Halo coming over to PlayStation. Again, I will pick this up if the full game is available on the disc, similar to Gears, really. If the game is available on disc and it's not kind of partial data, then I'll be happy to pick this up. Again, long time since I played Halo original. And then the other, here we go. Can you guys see that? So the handheld device. So a couple of weeks ago, the handheld was reported that it was delayed, pushed back. Right, we're not going to release it yet. We're going to do the software thing, and then we'll come back to the handheld. Well, a new report's come out saying that actually the handheld device is essentially cancelled. Corey is saying, pretty sure Microsoft is going to drip feed the entire library to PlayStation, release a remaster, remake for the franchise before rebooting the franchise. Yeah, I agree. I think they also want a return on investment on, I don't know, the 100 billion they spent on acquisitions over the last few years. They need that money back in the back to the shareholders. Stephen, you're saying with Halo coming to PlayStation, who would have thought that? No, who would have thought that 5 years ago? You know what? It's incredible what's happening to gaming this last 3 or 4 years. It really is. I don't think anyone would have predicted that you'd be able to play Gears, Forza, and Halo on your PlayStation 5. Hell, even your Switch. I don't think anyone would have been able to predict that. It's incredible. And that's why that question keeps coming up. When is the last Xbox hardware console? Is it going to be one more release and then we're not going to see any more? Or is that it? Are we done with hardware? Because this article about the handheld is saying it's essentially cancelled. So though Microsoft never announced an official Xbox handheld device, there were rumors about how such a device might factor into the company's next-gen console plans. Those plans are continuing to evolve. It seems, as a new report said, Microsoft's own Xbox handheld is essentially cancelled. A report from The Verge, citing insiders, said such a device is no longer going forward. This follows on from a report at the end of May that suggested plans for an Xbox handheld were sidelined. The Verge report added that Microsoft remains bullish on the idea of making next generation Xbox hardware, perhaps not in the way people think. We'll see multiple devices from PC makers like Asus that will also be considered a next generation Xbox console. That's what the report says. Spencer alluded to a closer collaboration between PC and console in a recent Xbox podcast interview. This is the tightest collaboration I've seen between the gaming organization and the Windows team in my 3 decades at the company, he said. Spencer also mentioned how Windows PC is an open platform and that he believes if managed properly, a PC can be considered as a game console. Absolutely not. While Microsoft may not develop its own dedicated gaming handheld device, the company is working with third-party devices like the recently announced Rogue Ally handhelds from Asus. GameSpot has contacted Microsoft in an attempt to get more details on the company's plans for handheld devices going forward. So it's clear that hang on, before I respond to this, what are you guys saying? Tox? There was a gaming turning point around the pandemic. Everybody was playing video games. That's right, there were. Everyone was gaming or YouTubing or on social media. 2020, right? 2020, 2021. And then we've started to see that decline. Subscription services, right? Netflix peaked at 2020, 2021. All these subscription services peaked around that time. But ever since, it's been declining because people are back to work, back in the office and that kind of stuff. Stephen, you're saying, like you said, there's literally no point in buying an Xbox, maybe for Game Pass. Yeah, I mean, like I say, if you're, it's hard because if you've always gamed on Xbox, you want to continue. It's a nice console, it has good games, and you've always had it, and it is tough taking what's happening to Xbox. Microsoft don't give a shit. They don't give a damn about the console, because if they wanted to, they could easily make games exclusive to the Xbox console. If they wanted to do it, they could do it. And that will keep people invested in the console, but they're not doing it. They're releasing games everywhere, giving people a reason not to buy the console. Miasma, how you doing, buddy? How much? I don't know what you are referring to. If it runs like a PC, have win, it's a PC. I don't get what's happening with the Xbox console, the next one, the future one, if it is a PC in a box or an Xbox in a PC box. Bloody, it's hot in here, man. It's absolutely roasting. How much is a handheld? We don't know. A lot of people are speculating it's going to be like $1,000. Right? I don't know. I have no idea how much the Asus Rogue Ally Xbox handheld device is going to be. The third-party manufactured one. Not got a clue. Nothing's been announced yet. Apparently it's coming out later this year. Now, look, people have been talking about the Xbox handheld for a long time. And a couple of weeks ago, the report came out, said it was on hold. And now behind the scenes, it seems like people in the know are talking about it being cancelled. And what's interesting here is that, are we going to get a next-gen Xbox handheld? I asked this question earlier. Do you think we're going to get a next-gen console? Or is it going to be this PC in a box type thing? Are they thinking, right? Are Microsoft thinking, look, why don't we just partner with companies that have history of making PC components, PC parts, and PCs? Companies like Asus, companies like Dell, Alienware, HP, those companies are typical companies that make PCs. Why don't we partner with them and they can just build us a shell, and inside there we'll have a Windows operating system, and it will play all of our Xbox games, and we're not going to manufacture it. Is that what they're talking about? Because I can't see them making any more consoles. PC in a box, Tox, you're saying PC in a box. Possibly. 1,000 quid. Yeah, it's going to be expensive. A lot of people have been commenting on the channel in the video about the handheld being cancelled, and they're saying it's going to be expensive. It's not going to be cheap. I don't see the benefit. But I'm not an Xbox gamer. I don't game on the go. I don't even use my mobile for gaming. So maybe if you game on the go, maybe if you commute long distances every day, maybe it's for you. Maybe it's the kind of thing you're looking for. I don't know. Is the Steam Deck bigger than the Xbox, than the handheld PC? I have no idea. I don't game on handheld. I don't know how big the Steam Deck is. Petrov, I can't answer that, buddy. Have a look on Amazon. Look at the specs on a Steam Deck. Go and have a look at Steam. See what the spec dimensions are. Because I don't think the dimensions have been given out, have they, for the Rogue Ally X? I don't remember seeing the dimensions. Lil, I'll call you Lil, bud. Call me crazy, but I predict Sony might buy Valve Steam to better position themselves on PC. Wow. Plus Steam has millions of players. I don't know. I can't see it happening. I can't see I don't think Steam will be purchased or Valve will be purchased. If they do, they're going to sell for ridiculous amounts of money. You know, if Activision Blizzard goes for nearly 70 billion, right? How much is Steam going to sell for? It's going to be stupid numbers. I don't think that will never happen. Well, never say never, but I can't see it happening. Right. Yeah, Gabe won't sell Steam. I don't think Steam was up for sale. Right. Guys, are we ready to move on to the next topic? Topic number 3. Tell me in the chat, are we moving on from the Gears, Halo, Xbox discussion? Are we moving on to Tencent, Shift Up, and Stellar Blade? Let me know in the comment. Let me know in the chat if it's time to move on. Yeah, let's move on. Right. Let's move on. Right, topic 3 then, right? So I saw this and got me worried, to be honest. It got me worried. So let's have a look. Let's get the article up. This is coming from Eurogamer. So Ubisoft, Roblox, Riot, and now Helldivers, Tencent just acquired a 15% stake in Arrowhead Games. So this is the first bit I want to look at, then we'll move on to Shift Up, right? Arrowhead were working with PlayStation on Helldivers 2. And all of a sudden, Tencent has stepped up and they've acquired 15%. So Tencent has previously founded or acquired shares in a variety of video game companies, including a new gaming venture with Ubisoft, total ownership of Riot Games, a major ownership position for 10 Chamber, and now its own publishing arm, Level Infinite. Speaking to DI founder John Palstead, stated that bringing Tencent in as partial owners opens up opportunities for China as a market. Gaining access to the Chinese player base is the holy grail in the gaming industry. You can see that. A recent financial report reviewed by DI stated Arrowhead had a turnover of 959 million, which is around 73 million, and an operating profit of, and these numbers don't make sense, as it goes from dollars. I don't know what SEK is. Anyway, not too much of a surprise considering Helldivers 2 was PlayStation's fastest selling game ever. The game had recently found itself the stage for an invasion of Super Earth itself, which revitalized the game's player base to its highest point. Right? It had about 500,000 players on, I think 480,000 at its peak on Steam. So they've got a 15% stake here in Helldivers. So Sony's missed that opportunity to do something with Arrowhead. And this is the report that came out. Right? You can't... try to get that in so you can see it. The Tox is saying Arrowhead isn't happy with Sony. Petrov saying, why didn't Sony buy a stake in Arrowhead? I don't know. I don't know. I think you sometimes you can read behind the scenes, right? You can read between the lines when you see reports come out. And I think just this isn't a fact. This is just my interpretation. I think Arrowhead wanted Helldivers 2 to go everywhere. I think after their success of launching it onto PlayStation and the initial success on PC when the PSN restrictions were switched off, because there were some issues at launch, PlayStation switched off the requirement to have a PSN account. The game took off. It was an instant success worldwide. I think Arrowhead wanted that to continue, but Sony switched on the PlayStation Network requirement after around 3 months, and it kicked off, and there was all these reports about people being upset stuff like that. So I think that's why Arrowhead may be upset about PlayStation's stance on the games on PC, whereas Tencent will just send it everywhere. Corey, you're saying Sony 100% owns the Helldivers IP, not Arrowhead. Arrowhead is the third-party developer of the game, but they don't own any part of the game and have no say where the game goes. Tox, you're saying 100% PSN. Miasma, Sony snobbery can be a bad look. Corey, to address your point, I think you're right. I think Sony owns the IP for Helldivers 2. Arrowhead were the development studio that made the game, and whether they can make another Helldivers game or not, I doubt. I don't know if they need permission from Sony to do that, if it's Sony's IP. But the fact that Tencent have got their claws in a studio that's delivered a successful live service game is the bigger concern. Sony's acquired, not to go back to the live service discussion, but Sony's acquired Bungie, and it's been a disaster so far. And they've invested in thousands and thousands of developers, and God knows how many millions in development time across all their studios to make live service games work. And the only studio that's delivered a successful live service game has now had 15% acquired of that studio from a great big global gaming company like Tencent, whereas they were in the hands of Sony. There was an opportunity there for Sony to do something. So I think it's a missed opportunity. Whether or not Tencent does something with Helldivers, if it's their IP or not, I don't know. But I'm just referring to the opportunity that Sony's missed from a live service perspective. Corey saying Sony has 100% owned the Helldivers IP since before the release of Helldivers 1. Okay, well, Tencent might not be able to get Helldivers, but they've got the devs that, well, they may have the devs that created that game. So let's have a look at this then, because it's still referring to Tencent. So Stellar Blade developer Shift Up, their investors are reportedly very concerned for the studio's independence due to its ties with Tencent. Now, Stellar Blade, we know, has been hugely successful, and it's an independent developer. Shift Up, which was previously a mobile game developer before it embarked on making a AAA action game, with a sequel confirmed to be on the way, and Shift Up still working on the mobile series that helped grow the studio in the first place. The future should be incredibly bright for Shift Up, and it largely still is, but some of the company's investors are fearful that Shift Up could lose its independence, putting a fog over the future of the studio and its current path. According to a report from the South Korean publication Global Economic, Shift Up's investors are concerned with how narrow the split is between Shift Up Chief Executive Officer Hyung Tae Kim's shares and Tencent's. Hyung Tae Kim currently owns 39% of the studio, while Tencent is just under 5% behind him, owning 34.58% of Shift Up. The concern is that Tencent could overtake Hyung Tae Kim by buying up more shares, and combined with the fact that Tencent is the company Shift Up works with to publish its mobile games, the studio could lose its power to make decisions for itself. Tencent has been making strategic investments in companies across the video game industry for years, with their fingers in the pies of studios like Ubisoft, Remedy, Epic Games, Funcom, and from Software's parent company, Kirikawa. In the case of Riot Games, Tencent outright bought the studio after consistently increasing its stake. It's still too early to tell if Shift Up is in real trouble of being acquired by Tencent, but considering that Tencent is a key factor in Shift Up's revenue through the studio's mobile games, and how close Tencent is to becoming the studio's largest shareholder, it does feel like Tencent is primed to add Shift Up to its internal portfolio of studios. So it is a concern. They are buying up more and more, and I just wonder, is this another opportunity that Sony is missing out on? Oh my god, it's hot in here. Corey, you're saying they cannot make another Helldivers without Sony for the same reason From Software cannot make another Bloodborne game without Sony. It's also why Dark Souls is called Dark Souls and not Demon Souls. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's more for me, it's more than just that the Helldivers thing. It's great to see Helldivers flourishing. It's great that the Sony owns the IP. Fantastic. But all these studios and all these developers that Sony has invested in, it's just sod's law, isn't it? The one studio that does a phenomenal job with the live service game, Tencent has their claws in them, not Sony. I can't believe they're missing the opportunity. I cannot believe it. They spent billions on Bungie, and yet they're working closely with a studio like Arrowhead, and they've missed the opportunity to do something with them. I think Sony needs to act quickly here if they have any intentions of either acquiring or buying shares in ShiftUp. So we've seen Tencent increase their stake in Arrowhead, and they did a fantastic job with Helldivers 2. And now they're obviously sniffing around Stellar Blade. So I think it's a concern. I think it's a missed opportunity if PlayStation doesn't do something or Sony doesn't do something with ShiftUp. What do you guys think? What are your thoughts? Petrov is saying Sony just bought a stake in Kanakoa. They did, but I think Tencent was sniffing around Kanakoa, and the studio wanted investment from Sony rather than anybody else. So Sony purchased more stock, but it wasn't as much as what people were hoping for. It wasn't an outright acquisition. They just increased their shareholding within the company. Timmy, you're saying Tencent might end up like Disney by the end of the... yeah. They seem to own everything, or they have a stake in everything right now. Tox is saying that the developers from Arrowhead are also kind of toxic. Do you guys remember when developers were going at it with gamers on Reddit? It got pretty ugly to the point where developers got fired. Wow, I wasn't aware of that. I was not aware of that. Was this whilst they were working on Helldivers 2, or after the release of Helldivers 2? I don't remember that. Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy that Tencent's it's humongous. And obviously Arrowhead wants a piece of the Chinese market, but Sony has a piece in the Chinese market, and personally I think they should have partnered with PlayStation. Corey, you're saying it should be understood that Arrowhead had a bit but a flash in the pan moment with Helldivers 2. Helldivers 1 sold 250,000 units before Sony gave it into PS Plus. Yeah. Maybe. I think honestly, and we'll move on to the next topic in a second, but I think what really helped Helldivers 2, and it's a controversial topic, but the removal from PlayStation of PlayStation Network requirements when the game launched, right? I think that requirement, which wasn't needed when Helldivers 2 launched because there were problems, it was a buggy launch, so they switched it off, which meant everyone from around the world could access and play Helldivers 2. And so it was available to everybody. PC players, everybody around the world had access to Helldivers, and they were having a blast. I think that really helped the game take off massively. Right. Toxie saying it's during the game nerf balance and during the PSN debacle. Yeah, things got pretty wild during that PSN debacle from everyone's perspective. I mean, it was toxic from everybody, from every side. I just remember people on PC were, it was very toxic. People on PlayStation, people arguing for and against PSN requirements, developers kicking off. It was not good, I think one of the problems was that I think PlayStation sold the game and then they switched on PSN requirements. But if you had the game, you could no longer now access the game if you were in one of those countries that PSN wasn't allowed in. Corey, you're saying same with ShiftUp. They had a number of games that failed before they partnered with Sony and made Stellar Blade. We need to see if those devs have a good idea that PS nurtured, or if they are going to make great games without Sony. We'll find out, right? We'll find out what their next project is. Isn't there? They're stepping away from Sony, aren't they, on their next project? They're going it alone, as it were. So we'll see how that project develops, and if it does well, then fair play. The devs have done a good job. And if they struggle with it, then we know that maybe the PlayStation devs, the PlayStation team were there for Arrowhead to lean on with the development of Helldivers. Timmy, you're saying, who knows, they may buy up Microsoft. Well, yeah, Microsoft is just a machine right now in terms of, what are they, $3.5–4 trillion market valuation? It's ridiculous. Absolute crazy. Sax Max, you're saying hoping Shift Up can remain independent. Sony should buy into Shift Up and continue to partner with them. Yeah, yeah. The thing is, it's very tempting though when you've got a company like Tencent who can give you access to 1 billion people, of which, I don't know, a third, a quarter play games on PC. Right? Consoles don't do well in China. Right? It's mainly a PC market or mobile gaming, and that's what Arrowhead want. They want to be able to sell their game to a PC market in China, have access to 250–300 million people. So we'll see what happens with that. I caught wind of that story because I was looking into the success of Stellar Blade on PC. It looked absolutely... I mean, the game is fantastic, but there's a new photo mode that kicked in, and it looks fantastic. And on PC, I don't know if you guys have seen some of the reports. Modders are having a lot of fun, let's put it that way, with Stellar Blade. Maybe that's one of the reasons why it's got 100,000 concurrent players on PC right now. Corey, you're saying, remember Sony let Insomniac go make Sunset Overdrive for MS, which fell before they were selected to be the Spider-Man dev. Yep, I remember that. Yeah, that was very true. What an investment Insomniac games were. What an investment. Yeah, Eastern Conference Gaming, how you doing, buddy? Yeah, they're not playing the game, are they? They're having more fun with modding. Yeah, I've seen some of the modding pictures, clips. Shall we say? Wow, what is going on with that game on there? Anyway, I'm digressing here. Shall we move on, guys? Shall we move on to the final discussion point on the podcast, because we're moving on to point 4 now. Yeah, you guys let me know. I say you guys will dictate and determine how fast or how slow the pacing, should we say? You guys will determine the pacing of the podcast. Let me know in the chat if it's time to move on to the next topic. I don't think there's anything more to discuss about Tencent other than that they are, well, they've got a lot of IP under their belt. Yeah, let's move on, guys. Let's move on to the next topic. So we mentioned, right? We just mentioned about the PSN problems, and this is coming from, again, it's been reported on many gaming sites, and the one I've picked here is WCCF Tech, and what they're saying here is that PlayStation appears to be removing region restrictions for its games on PC, which could mean massive exposure for some of its games. So let's have a look. So hopefully you can see some of that. PlayStation porting its first-party console-exclusive games to PC should have always been a full slam dunk for the company, as everyone can get behind more people being able to play good games where they want to play them. But the company's new multi-platform approach has been plagued by PlayStation seemingly shooting itself in the foot by trying to force players to link their Steam accounts with a PlayStation Network account and blocking its games, even the ones it only published, like Stellar Blade, from being sold in the 100 plus countries where PSN is not available. So it started being a major issue with Helldivers 2 and has since been a talking point with every port of a PlayStation game to PC. However, as spotted by Wario64, it looks like PlayStation is starting to see the light. Region restrictions for God of War Ragnarok, The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered, Marvel's Spider-Man 2, and Helldivers 2 have all been removed. Hopefully, this is a sign that we won't have to have the conversation around region locking when it comes to PlayStation games on PC again. The recent released Days Gone Remastered didn't launch with a region lock, and now that we're seeing them being removed from older releases, the saga seems to be finally over. Which is great for all involved. It never made sense in the first place that PlayStation would bring its games to Steam with the intention of getting players who may not have access to a PlayStation or choose not to play on a console for one reason or another, only to block those players specifically in over 100 regions around the world from playing their games. So, guys, what do you make of that? The restrictions are being removed from countries around the world, meaning more games that are being released on PC now has wider exposure. What do you guys think about that? Corey, you're saying here, some studios need to go out and see what development is like without Sony support before they realize that they were better off. Yeah. Yes. You know, so what's that saying? The grass is not always greener on the other side, right? Yeah. So sometimes you do have to go out, fly the nest, as it were, try and support yourself and see how things are before you realize, bloody hell, we had it good. Maybe we need to go back. So maybe that is what Sony is thinking too. Eastern Conference Gaming saying they're having more fun modding. Yes. Yes, they are. And don't be so gloom on Tencent if they want to support devs and be a catalyst for a new project. So be it for, as in the IP on Helldivers, Sony always usually keeps their IP. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, I suppose if it's coming across as doom and gloom, then that's not my intention. I'm looking at this. I'm purely from a PlayStation perspective. Here we are 5 years into the console generation, and they've got all these studios, or they did have all these studios making live service games. They've got this studio here who they've partnered with, who has delivered the most successful live service game PlayStation has ever released. Amongst all these live service projects that have cancelled, right under the nose, they're working with this development team that have had the best live service game, and they're not doing anything about it, even though another company like Tencent is acquiring more of the shares. I think from that perspective, I think Sony needs to do more. Not necessarily dumping on Tencent. I don't really have anything to say on Tencent, really, to be honest. But I think from a Sony perspective, I think they missed an opportunity, and I don't want them to miss the opportunity with Stellar Blade as well. That was my kind of point. Stephen, you're saying makes sense. They will sell even more. Obviously, yeah. I think if they're gonna, here's the thing I don't get, right. If they're gonna come out and release a game on PC, you've already made the decision. You're putting your game onto PC. Well, go the whole hog and put it everywhere on PC. Don't restrict certain countries and regions. I understand why they have these restrictions. I understand that they want people to connect to a PlayStation Network account. They want to measure data, they want to measure statistics, they want you to buy into the PlayStation ecosystem. But if Steam is available in pretty much most countries, then PlayStation have to sort out PlayStation Network. They need to get that in every country. In this day and age, a company the size of Sony should be sorting that out. It shouldn't be a problem having access to PlayStation Network, right? That shouldn't even be a conversation. If you can access Epic Games, you can access Steam, you can access Game Pass, why can't you access PlayStation Store? Why can't you access the PlayStation Network? That should not be a conversation. So the fact that they're opening up games and not having these restrictions, I think is great. It gives everyone a chance to play the game if it's on PC anyway. So I don't really see that as as a negative thing. It's a good thing. But surely the issue for Sony needs to be, let's get the damn PlayStation Network system sorted out so that everyone can access it regardless of the country you're in. And then, listen, if you have to have a PlayStation Network account, then you have to have it, right? You can't play a Rockstar game or a Take-Two game without signing up to one of their studios. You can't play GTA or Red Dead Redemption on PC without having a Rockstar account. You can't play an Ubisoft game without signing up to Ubisoft. You can't play an Xbox game without signing up to Xbox on PC, right? You've got to have an account for those companies. That's how it works. EA, you have to have an EA account, right? So they've got to make sure that the PlayStation Network works in every country if they want to put these restrictions in place. And if there's problems in certain countries, then remove that restriction. That makes more sense. So I think it's a good thing that they're doing this, and it gives more people on PC a chance to play those games without having to worry about a PlayStation Network account. That's my take on it. What do you guys think? Let me know your thoughts. Get with the times or die. It's very extreme there, Miyasama. Very extreme. But if Sony's releasing games on PC, make them available for everyone. They've already taken that decision, haven't they? They've already made their minds up about taking their games to PC. So what's the point of blocking people from playing it? You might as well just make it available in every country. They need to do that. I don't see why that was a problem in the past. It never really made sense with me. Guys, what are your... Let's go back to the topics. So we've gone through the 4 topics I picked for the podcast today. Yeah, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on the things we've talked about today? Get PSN everywhere. I agree. Yeah, if it's not available everywhere, take it off on PC until they get it everywhere. And once it's everywhere, then you can have an account. Then you can have people sign up for it. Then there's no problems, right? Eastern Conference Gaming, rather. You're saying, and for us, Tencent, they're not the same. They got Sean Layden over advising them. Is that right? Is Sean Layden advising Tencent? I wasn't aware of that. Well, like I said, I don't have anything bad to say about Tencent. I just think it's a missed opportunity for Sony not acquiring or not having shares in companies like Shift Up and Arrowhead. Stephen, you're saying definitely agree with getting PSN every. Yeah, it needs to. There's in this day and age, really, that if they're developing cloud tech, subscription services, and stuff like that, there's no reason why PSN cannot be everywhere. It's a silly thing that it's restricted in some countries. Yeah, he's over there. Sean Layden. Oh, I wasn't aware of that. I'll have to do a bit more digging around on Tencent, see what Sean's advising on. Yeah, it's crazy people don't have access to it, especially on PC. If you're going to port your game onto PC, just make everyone play it. I'm sure Sony will see a big increase in some of their sales on PC with that. Guys, we've covered the 4 topics that I wanted to cover on the podcast today. How are you guys feeling? Yeah, I think No worries, Eastern Conference Gaming. No worries. I appreciate you tuning in. Doesn't matter if you're late. You know, this thing will be on YouTube for years, hopefully, so you can tune in anytime. One thing I would like your opinion on, guys. When you get a chance, don't have to do it today. Do it later. When you get a chance, watch the first 5 minutes of the stream. I did a little intro. I did a video. Let me know your thoughts on that video when you get a chance. I quite like having a different intro video to the podcast. So every time you tune into the podcast, there'll be a different intro to kind of greet you, get you guys warmed up really before we discuss the topics. But I'd like to get your thoughts right on the content we discussed, the layout of the content, the layout of the podcast. You know, have we spent enough time on each of the topics? Should we have spent more time on each of the topics? I know there was only 4 topics, but I don't want to dwell on one discussion point for too long. So I'm mindful that we should always keep things flowing. So I like your thoughts really. I like your suggestions and ideas about how to make the stream better over time. You don't have to do it now on the chat, but maybe drop a comment when you get a chance. Eastern Conference Gaming, good show. Super. Petrov, thumbs up. Windstream from Tox. Thank you guys. Yes, guys, hit that like button. Hit that like button, please. That would really help the stream out massively. Corey, you're saying the problem with PSN account on PC and putting PSN everywhere is that there either are some countries that want to restrict the PSN. Example, like PSN accounts can't be made by a person younger than 18. I see. I understand. What about Steam? Do you have to be 18 then to access? Because I have a Steam account. I made it years ago. But isn't that the same with Steam, or can you be under 18 and have a Steam account? I'm not sure really. If you guys have Steam accounts, let me know. Miasma, maybe put the story window in the big window. Story. Oh, you mean the article? Is that what you're referring to? I can do that. That's not a problem. Stephen, you're saying really enjoyed the stream. We'll be watching the next one for sure. Thank you, buddy. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Miasma, are you saying have the article slightly bigger so you can read it? If that's the case, I'll make a note of that for next time. That is definitely something that we can introduce. Steam does not have age restriction. Ah, that's interesting. That is very interesting. Well, I think there's definitely lessons learned from Sony, isn't there? There's definitely things they need to do. I wonder why they've all of a sudden removed those restrictions. Maybe we'll get to learn a bit more about why those restrictions have come up, why they've taken them off. Some of the older games certainly, and obviously Days Gone Remastered had their restrictions removed. So we'll see. We'll see if there's another. What have we got? We've got Marathon coming up, haven't we? Live service game, right? We'll see, because that's going day and day everywhere. So we'll see on PC if Marathon has PlayStation Network restrictions. If it doesn't, it means Sony's working on something here. They've opened it up to everybody around the world. Petrov, you like the topics? Excellent. Okay, guys. Look, I think for the first podcast on the channel, I think we're done. I think it's been good. I appreciate you guys turning up, supporting on the stream. Really appreciate it. And if you happen to watch this after the event, thank you very much. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Eastern Conference Gaming. Listen, they figure they want money. They're cultivating devs in new regions. They're going to get together. Let's hope they get it together. Let's hope they get it together. Guys, thank you very much for tuning in today. Appreciate it. Appreciate your support. I think we're done. We covered the topics. Had a blast. I'll make some notes. We'll make some improvements for the next stream next Sunday. Catch you guys later. Don't forget to hit the like button on the way out. And before you guys go, check out the video.